මිළඟට ආචාර්ය Harsha de Silva.
Thank you. I didn't know Mangala Samaravira, other than that he was a distinguished old royalist. My first encounter with him was a spat. I had criticized him, called him a fashion designer. What is he trying to do with economics? Long time back. And then he hit me back hard. He had called a press conference and decimated me. And many years later, I met him at the Bayleaf. And Harpa Gunaratna said, Harsha, Mangala is there. You know, I think you should go and talk to him, meet him. I had met him. And I went up to him and he gave me a hug. And I returned it. And he said, Harsha, there is no need to fight. No, let's have a drink. And that is how when I actually physically met him for the first time. I'm honored and privileged to speak a few words about a man who I admired and wish I had the opportunity to work with him for more years to come in the future. When we worked on the last Sajit Premadasa presidential election campaign, which Nalin Bandara just spoke about, we proposed to strengthen the reforms we had initiated to take the nation as a whole. It had fallen into due to ill planning both on the economy and in society. Mangala, even though he faded out towards the end of that campaign and decided later not to contest the general election, he reignited his ideology with what Mr. Ranil Wickramasinghe earlier spoke about, with young people, call it the Radical Center and the Freedom Hub. Mangala was always a trailblazer, and most people who spoke about Mangala today mentioned that fact. He feared no one. The man who had the courage of steel, or you may substitute with something else that we use in normal parlance, of steel, to stand for what he believed in. The reforms he started on the economy were truly significant. He understood the meaning of fiscal discipline. I recall, Honorable Chair, the debates at the government group meeting on certain issues dealing with finance. And some people would argue with him, you don't know what you're doing. You have to give jobs, you have to distribute this or that. And he would listen and reply, I know what I'm doing. And he would continue to go ahead and do what he planned to do. Since the 50s, it was only during Mangala Samaravira's stint as the Minister of Finance, Sri Lanka saw a primary surplus in 2018 and 2019, helped by our colleague Eran Wickramaratne. It was a huge deal. You know, he was not an economist, we all knew that, but he was a hell of a smart man. He was able to figure things out very quickly. Having held ministerial portfolios since he was a young man, he knew how to get things done. He was able to figure things out. And on the economy, he listened to advice. Dr. R.H.S. Samaratunga, or Sam as he used to call him, would discuss things with him every day. He would go to him with a big file and tell him, sir, this or that. He had a great team at the Ministry of Finance whom he respected, but not always.
සභාවේ අනිත් මන්ත්‍රීවරු කරුණා කරලා නිශ්ශබ්දතාවය රකින්න සභාවට බාධා කරන්න එපා. බොහොම ස්තුතියි.
Thank you, sir. But not always blindly agreed. He would ask, why? Who? I recall one instance when we were trying to get the Salaries and Cadres Commission to approve the 1,997 staff for the ambulance service we had started. It had taken 8 months, and one particular position was not defined. The position was called pilot. And they said there cannot be pilots driving vehicles. Pilots, fly aircraft. After 9 months of this debate, I had no choice. Go to Mangala's office, open the door, he was with some people. I basically let go. I said, you go and do it yourself. If you are not able to fix this for me, right, I am walking out, or something like that. And he said, Harsha, calm down. Let us sort this out. And that's how he was able to fix problems that were almost unfixable. Right? He had other advisors. Deshal Dimel was somebody he relied on, a competent young economist. Then Mano Tittawala, the late Mano Tittawala, was with him for a while. He consulted many people. Of course, he had people like Juan Ferdinand and, all those media folk who knew everything and how to communicate. He relied on them for advice, and he was a great communicator himself, perhaps the best we've seen. Like I was saying, he consulted various people, CEOs, senior professionals, business people, chambers. That's how he figured out the game plan to put this country's economic path back in the right trajectory. Then he had Malik. Malik Samaravikrama, I think, was one of his closest cabinet colleagues, both of whom were liberal, reformist-oriented strategists. I recall multiple times going to see him in his office, and between his office and the office at the back, there was a little room. That was a pantry, the lunch room. And if I would go to see him during lunch, I would see Malik and him sitting there and enjoying takeout sushi on multiple occasions. Mangal always welcomed the well-articulated professional advice of Indrajit Kumaraswamy. Never a politician, a prudent monetary policy man. He, along with the Deputy Governor Nandalal Veerasinghe, would on many an occasion have rather heated debates in the regular Temple Trees Monday morning meetings that were chaired by the then Prime Minister, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. For juniors like us, it was fascinating to watch and learn how things were resolved with national interest at heart. I recall vividly a series of events during the 2018 October coup. Iran and I joined Mangala on the early morning breakfast media conferences we held at his Stanmore Crescent house. He was aghast at how the illegal government was messing things up. After the legitimate government was reinstated and Mangala was again the Minister of Finance, the economic situation looked bad. I recall very well Mangala telling me, Harsha, there is a $500 million bond that needs to be paid in a week. They had kicked the IMF agreement aside. Government securities to the amount of, I think, around $500 million had flown out. Credit ratings had been downgraded. Mangala said, we need to get back on track. We need to speak to the IMF, and we need to get back on the program. We need to think about the future. He wanted the credit ratings to come back up. Then he said, let us go and meet Christian Lagarde. And he invited Mr. Kumaraswamy and myself. I recall it was a very cold winter morning when we had the meeting, or supposed to have the meeting. 4 inches of snow. DC was closed, not like in Ontario where, or Toronto where you are, where with 4 feet of snow the city would run. I remember the meeting vividly. The next day, he met Ms. Lagarde, and they had so much respect for him and agreed to all his requests. And I realized what a great politician he was at that meeting, how he was able to speak to leaders of the world and get his point across and get them to agree. Not only Lagarde, but as his junior at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Chairman, I had an amazing opportunity to be a part of the many discussions he had with global leaders. You know, I get goosebumps when I think about those meetings. He had a few favorites though, and I think his most favorite among all these dignitaries he knew was President Obama's cabinet member Samantha Power. I remember one evening after dinner at Mangala's Stanmore Crescent House, where Honorable Alawatuwala mentioned how she said that she had so much work, she was in the middle of writing some major volume, but she took a day or two off just to fly all the way down here for Mangala's 30th celebration and book launch. We had an amazing discussion. Would have been 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning when, yes, we stopped. And the discussion was about American politics. From Hamilton's days, he discussed. So I know you're telling me that I have to hurry up, but
there are about 30. Honorable Mangala Samaravira is so popular. There are about 30 speakers lined up today. So we need to be mindful of time, Honorable Member. Thank you.
Right. It was not known, but much later divulged by her how he actively, behind the scenes, on a personal basis, worked on getting the Pfizer vaccine to Sri Lanka. When she wrote about it in her tribute to him when he passed away. Working with him was such a pleasure. I have said it before, Mr. Chairman, but I will say it again. Mangala was my best boss. Given how senior politicians try to take credit for things their juniors do, I want to give you one example. It was April 2017. We had worked really hard to get GSP Plus back. Everything was on track. And a resolution was brought by 2 MEPs to deny Sri Lanka the GSP Plus concession. He told me, go and meet these people. Deal with it. I will sort everything out from here. You speak to them. And all his connections he put to use. I recall Nirj Deva. He was an MEP from the UK. And of course, Rodney Pereira, who was our man in Brussels. And all the diplomatic community there came to Mangala's rescue. I was just a point man, to manage the situation. And we beat the resolution 436 to 119. I was ecstatic, and I called Mangala, I recall, from the canteen in the European Parliament. I said, Mangala, we got it. Why don't you announce it? He said, Harsha, it can wait till you come. You come and have a press conference and announce it. Which politician in this dog-eat-dog world would do that, Mr. Chairman? That was Mangala Samaravira. In fact, I became his friend. I will take only a couple of minutes and stop, right? More than a work colleague. And he had time at his house, couch, maybe a couple of others, dog, and a few scotches, a lengthy discussion on politics. I only wish I could have worked with him a lot more after the next change. Even though some of his ideas didn't quite gel with our new political party, I'm 100% certain that we would have somehow found the way to work together. After all, he dedicated his life to pursue his vision for a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multilingual Sri Lanka that he always said would guarantee equal rights, justice and dignity for all. Dear Mangala, wherever you may be, let me give you my word That is my vision too, sir. In closing, I wish to convey my deepest condolences to his sister Jayanti, who was, like Ralph said, was always with her, continued to be by his side, and all others who were part of his family, the one he, the liberal man, created for himself. May Mangala attain the supreme bliss of Nirvana. Thank you.
Thank you. Many